That's fine. So we'll start. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So today we will see how to debug our MapReduce jobs. So
Okay.
the there are various ways of debugging the MapReduce job, and the debugging itself says that if something has gone wrong, you want to root cause that why it has gone wrong. Either when you so actually the main intention of writing or debugging or the main intention of when you're developing a product is to catch the bugs in the development phase itself. It's not like you develop the entire product, deploy into the production cluster, and something is going wrong over there. The best idea is when you are developing the product, you should be able to catch your bugs, or you should be able to catch your defects when you are doing the development itself, right? So at least most of them, not everything. But so what you do actually, you write a unit test cases in your project, so that you in the unit test cases you write some test cases so that your flow or whatever code is tested, a particular flow. And if someone has changed your flow, then it will, and if it is not aligned with the flow or the test case output, then it will throw an exception. So the one way, that is known as unit test cases. So in Java you use JUnit test cases, JUnit, um, what do you say, JUnit framework, which stands for Java Unit Testing Framework, right? So JUnit stands for Java Unit Testing Framework. You use that, and you write a couple of unit test cases to test your particular flow of code. And then second way is a local runner, wherein if you understand that when we have deployed our MapReduce job, when we deployed our jar into our cluster, so you saw that there were 5 map tasks, 1 reduced task, 5 map tasks, 10 reduced tasks, a couple of map tasks and a couple of reduced tasks were running. All these map tasks and reduced tasks runs on a separate JVM altogether. Now the concept of separate JVM is all these are running on a different process altogether. So failure of one will not affect the execution of other. That's why they say map tasks are a separate tasks, right? So and how they are made separate, by running those tasks into a separate JVM. So if you have 5 map tasks M1, it will run on a separate JVM. Let's say JVM 1. M2, second map task, it is running on a JVM 2. Similarly, all these map tasks run on separate JVM when you run in a distributed fashion. So if this JVM goes down, or in other words, if this process is killed, or this map task has failed, then it will not affect the execution of the map task 2 because they're running on a separate JVM. But when you are talking about debugging, there is no concept as of now distributed debugging. You can do a local debugging wherein using the Eclipse you can connect to one of the tasks and then you can do the debugging. That's very difficult again. I have not ever tried it out. But the problem here is how do you debug your entire MapReduce job together? So that's where you have the concept of local runner, wherein local runner is nothing but, it means that running entire MapReduce job locally. In other words, locally means entire MapReduce job running on running in single JVM. Okay. So in other simple words, all the map and reduce tasks will run in single JVM. Then which will help us in debugging MapReduce job locally. So I would like to put my breakpoints and then I would like to see how does it works, right? The third way of debugging is the isolation runner, which I have not done, which I have not explored enough, so I might not be able to give you enough insights into this. So you can Google it out. What is isolation runner? So it basically to give you a small hint, that to give you a small whatever I have learned, that isolation runner is basically the name itself says isolation. So if particular map, you know that particular map reduce job, a particular map task works on particular block of data. This works on B1, this works on B2. Now if this map task has failed, M1, then you can run this map task isolatedly on this B1 block of data. It will not run on any other block of data. So that's what concept of isolation run. So you are isolating it. So today we'll see how to write the unit test cases and how to debug our MapReduce job using Eclipse or using local using Eclipse, and how to debug our MapReduce job when we run the MapReduce job as a local runner. First, we start with how to write the unit test cases. So first and foremost, we are using a unit test cases, but let's see that whether we have included the appropriate dependency or not in our form.xml. So if you see, there's an MRUnit framework. If you see that here, it's basically a wrapper over your JUnit test case. Generally, you will have a JUnit version somewhere, but it's not required because we are using MRUnit. But by default, it will have every project will have a JUnit, JAS or JUnit framework. You use JUnit framework for writing unit test cases. So here it is. That's okay. That here we are talking about MRUnit framework. And also, please understand here that since we are using Hadoop 2, so Hadoop 1 and Hadoop 2, I hope you are aware of that. Hadoop 1 is where you have a previous versions of older APIs, and sometimes it also refers to before Yarn framework and all. Hadoop 2 newer API, and it will uses Yarn related properties, but that's okay. So what you need to understand that what you have to understand that this is our framework, MRUnit framework, using which we are going to test our mapper and reducer class. So our aim is that I have written my, let's say I'll start with word count mapper. So there is no way of testing my word count right now before I means there is no way to test until unless I create a jar, open up my deploy my jar into my cluster, and then give some data set, give some input to my MapReduce job, and it runs, and then it finally gives me the output, and then I check the output that it is coming proper or not. That is the only way. But I don't want that way. Right now I want a quick way of finding it out whether this map is going to give me appropriate results or not, which means that I need to send an input to my map. So input, these are my input. I hope you understand input key, input value, and with couple of outputs, I wanted to test that whether if I give some input, I am getting a proper output or not. And that is what is that unit test case. Unit test case, you give some input and also you give the output, and it runs your MapReduce job, and you actually compare your actual output and expected output. So to just give you test cases, you give input and also your expected output, okay, because you know that for this input I am expecting this output. Then what you do with that input, you run your test and you get actual output. If actual output equal to expected output, that means your logic is working, or else it will fail, or else there is something wrong. Correct? Okay. So that is what we're gonna do. So first and foremost, so if you see, these are my main. So generally, genuine test cases are written into separate source folder. Separate source folder. So the source main Java is your source folder for your main classes, and the genuine test cases or the test cases are written into separate source folder. That's source test Java. So when you write anything into source test Java, that will not be included in the part of your jar. Okay, so those classes will not be part of your jar. So I want to test right now is word count problem. So I'll create a com training, a package, word count, test. A com training test word count. Let me say test dot word count. So I'm testing my word count project. I create a class by name word count testing. Okay. Now there are a couple of classes which you have to. There are a couple of classes which you have to use. Just give me one moment. For testing your driver code, the MRUnit framework gives you a class by name map. The MRUnit framework gives you a class by name map driver to map driver, I believe. Map driver, and here you see again you have a couple of classes. So I'm going to use this two classes with the same name, and I want to use this class which has a MapReduce and map driver. So this is a class which will help you in testing your mapper class. Okay, so this class will help you in testing your mapper class. So what is our mapper class for the word count mapper? It is long writable text int writable. I can straight away copy it. So this class helps us in testing our mapper class. So we're instantiating it. So I will say map driver itself. Then there is a class by name reduce driver. Reduce driver, again you see that there are two classes with the same name. I'm going to use which has a map reduce driver, and word count reducer, it receives text int writable. So I'll just cut copy paste because I'm testing my reducer code, and I'll name the variable as reduce driver. So this class will help us in testing reducer logic. I will say mapper logic. That's makes more sense. There is another class which actually can test your entire MapReduce code. Okay, MapReduce driver is a class, and if you see that there are K1, V1, K2, V2, K3, V3. This is K1, V1. This is K1. This is V1. This is K2. This is V2. This is again K2, V2, K3, V3. So it actually expects everything. So you have to give the entire key value pairs, and this will name it as our MapReduce driver. Now, so this class helps us in testing the end-to-end MapReduce code. Now everything. So I will test first my mapper logic, then I will test my reducer logic, then I will test my entire end-to-end logic. But everything, you remember that, you understand that everything requires an input and then output, and then it will run the test case and it will say that whether your actual output is matching with your expected output or not. Okay. Now first and foremost, I want to test my mapper logic. Correct. So okay. So first and foremost, you need to say public void test word count mapper. Any method, but remember that there is some conventions. So first and foremost, if this is your test case and you want to run it as a MapReduce job, if below method This below method is your test case, is your test method, which you want to run as part of your build. That means Maven build, I would say, right? So that's, you understood, it's a Maven build. Then you need to annotate the below method with at test. So that's your below method at test. So you say at test. Now when you give this at test annotation on this top of this method, then this method will run as a part of your build. Okay, so that if any logic has been changed, so this test case will immediately fail, and then you will come to know, yes, something has gone wrong. And the convention is, it's a convention that any test method should start with test. So you have seen that test, and then I have given some name, word count mapper. So I'm testing my word count map. That's a convention. That's a standard. Okay. Okay. There is another method which is basically, you say setup method, wherein it's a kind of an initialization method, and you put an at before annotation, which actually means, at before means, the name itself says that this method will run before any other method gets executed. Before any other method gets executed. So for every test case, so this is what you can do at setup. Now setup is just if you want to do one-time initialization, you know what? If you want to do one-time initialization for any of your test case, if you want to do a one-time initialization, so this setup method will be executed before every test case. Will be executed before every test case. I believe so. Before every test, yes, before every test. If you want to, there is another annotation which is before class, at before class, so it will be executed only once for the entire test case. That's also possible. So at before is basically one time before every test case, and there's a before class which is one time for the entire class. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna map driver. I'm going to initialize. I have not initialized my MapReduce driver. This is just a normal variable declaration, and I have not initialized to anything. So let me initialize map driver to my mapper class. Map driver equal to new map driver. And if you see that here, I will give my class name new map driver. And what is the class name you want to test? I want to test my word count mapper. Word count mapper dot class. So that's I, and you give this. Okay, it is actually looking out for the this thing, so I will can give this. Have I given a new? Okay, I'm very sorry. Map driver. This is the class map driver. Word count mapper dot class. Just 1 minute. I'll take out the exact. Okay. New map driver, and I'll say new word count mapper. I'm very sorry, I have forgot to initialize that. New word count mapper, and that should be fine. So you have this map driver. You are instantiating of this map driver object, and you're giving your class name. That's which class you want to test. And then similarly, reduce driver equal to new reduce driver new reduce driver new word count reducer. Word count reducer. So you have instantiated your word count reducer also, and then you also instantiate your driver code. New MapReduce driver. So this is the class, and new MapReduce driver code, and here it requires. Okay, there is a way to give your driver code. No, so the MapReduce driver, it actually see that you actually take some new mapper code, new reducer code. Okay, I can give this new word count mapper, new word count reducer. So you have initialized, and one by one I can test my map driver, my reduce driver, everything I can test. So there is no need of a setup also. You can always initialize inside your class also, but that will be done every time, right? So you can do that as well. I've just given you one way that before every test class, whatever you needed, it will automatically be initialized for you. You don't have to worry about that. Or else you have to do it manually. You have to do it for every test case. Here in this method, it will be you have to actually instantiate for every test case. If you don't want to do that, this is one stack with his. So generally it is not preferred to repeat the code. So whatever it is one time initialization, you do in the setup method. Now what you want to test, you want to test your mapper code. So I'm testing my mapper logic. So first and foremost, I want to give him the a map driver dot. I want to give him the input, right? So what is that input? The input for that, I will say, just 1 minute, add with input, right? So if you see that this is the input, and my input, if you remember, the input for the mapper is one record, and one record is nothing but a line offset, right? A record is represented, you understand that one record is nothing but one line, and the input would be, and the input to a mapper logic is the key is long writable, the key is offset, which is long writable, and value is some line, value is record, entire line. So I will say new long writable. So my input I'm going to give as okay one, and then I'm going to give my input as a new text of hello, how are you? Correct. Now hello, how are you? So what I'm okay, this is my input, and what is the output? So give your expected output. So we are giving the input as expected by our map method. So you see the map method, and you will see that it is expecting this. It is expecting this input. Correct. So you have one. If you have forgot. So what count mapper? So you see that it requires a key and a value. So this is an input to your mapper. So I have given the input as a one record, that is a key as a long writable and value as entire text. So I have given that, and I'm also give your expected output. If this is your, so you know that you have written the logic, but what you're expecting. So give your expected output. So my expected output is hello one, how one, r1, u1. That's my expected output. Mapper will emit. Mapper has to emit following key value pairs. Hello comma one, how comma 1, r comma 1, u comma 1, and that's my expected output, and my logic should give me those expected output, right? So I have to give the input now. I have to give the output map driver dot with, okay, all output. Okay, and if you see that this all output is expecting a list of pair. Okay, correct. So I will first create a list of pair. I am going to have the pair of type MRUnit types, and this pair will have um, text writable, text and int writable, text and int writable. So these are my output key value pairs, right? So text and int writable, text and output key value pairs. I am saying int writable. Okay. So I'm going to say IKVs, that is intermediate key value pairs, new array list of, yeah. Okay. Now I wanted to add what I'm saying, IKV dot, I wanted to have this add new pair of, new pair, or you can generally, if you're confused if I'm doing in one shot, so you can, what you can do, I'm doing one by one. So pair of text int writable output 1 from my mapper is equal to new pair of new text comma int writable, right? I am going to make a new int writable 1 equal to new. This is not going to change, so that's why I'm declaring it as a this thing. It's not going to change for me. So new text, and I'll say 1, and this guy is hello, right? So I am saying this is my one key value pair. Similarly, I have how many key value pairs? 4 key value pairs. So I'm going to say I'm going to create a 4 key value pairs like this. Output 2, output 3, output 4. And output 2 is, let's say it could be, it's a how, and 1. It's R, it's 1, and U 1. So these are my expected outputs, which I'm gonna add it to my IKV dot add output 1. So I'm going to add to my list output 1, output 2, add it to output 3, output 4. So you have, so this is the list, and to this list I have added all these things. So this is my final list. So this is my expected output list, and I'm going to give it to my map driver, saying that that this is my list of my expected outputs, and you test it now with this input and this output whether it is working fine or not. So map driver dot run test. So you say run test, add the throws declaration, IU exception and everything. Okay, no problem. So that's your test case. And if you want to run this test case quickly, what you do, you select your class, right click on it, and say run as genuine test case. So it is running your genuine test case, and this is a green symbol, green ribbon, which means that your test case has successfully ran. So it is working fine. But let us say I'm going to change hello, how are you? And I'm going to put as a 1, let's say just for the time being, I'm saying hello 1. And I run this test case. I again select my class, right click on it, and run as genuine test case. You will see that it will gonna fail. So it says that it is failed, and it also tells me the assertion here that missing expected output hello one. So it is not expecting this out. It's you have given this and it is missing expected output. So the actual output does not contain this hello one. So now it is working fine. So I have to give this hello. So you see that um, you give this input, you give your expected output, and your logic is working fine. That means my mapper logic when it is going to run on a cluster, it is not going to give me any anomalous result. It is going to work like this perfectly fine. But if you want to test, like if you have a multiple, this is one simple case. Okay, test word count. I'll name this method as a test word count number one. I'll take up the same test case. I can cut, copy, paste, and I'll rename the method to test word count mapper 2. Now this case, let's say some arbitrary things are coming up. You have one exclamatory marks, one question, one exclamatory sign, okay, and you have a lot of spaces. But still, you want this output only because you have written the logic. These are not the words, so you should not emit the space. I have given some spaces, lot of spaces. So I again my mapper should emit only hello comma one, how comma one, r comma one, and u comma one. You want to test this whether it is working properly or not. So you say run your test case. Now if you have seen that we don't have to actually run the code onto cluster. I have quickly have verified that for this given input whether my output is coming as expected or not. So this is very useful, right? Now I don't give anything. Let's say I have only what all test case. Okay, let me just say I can write another test case for testing my mapper if it does not have if it only spaces. Okay, so in that case it should not produce anything, right? If let's say it has a lot of spaces only, so in that case it should not produce anything. What I can do here, I can comment this part, I can remove this part altogether. So it is like an empty key value pair, and let me run it. It is working fine. So that means to say that whether it's all this different inputs you have tested, and you are sure that you're gonna get the correct result. So your mapper logic is working fine. Now let us test our reducer logic, whether it is going to give us the intended output or not. Just 1 minute, my battery is dying. Okay. Now let us test our reducer code. Again, I will put an at test annotation so that it is recognized as a test case, and we'll follow the convention. Public void start the method with the test prefix, test word count reducer. Now we have to give the input. Now if you remember, reducer expects the value into, so reduce output. So I hope everyone remembers that output of the grouping operation is the input to the reduce method. Now output of the grouping operation is key and list of values. Correct. So reduce driver dot. If you see here, what is expecting list of pair of text of list of int writable. It's a very big. It's a list of a pair of text of list of int writables. Do we have with input? So it is pair of text and list of int writables. So I can use this. If you see this, what argument is taking? Its argument is taking as a pair of text of int writable. Okay, so I will say pair of text and list of int writables. So if you remember our output in our MapReduce code, the what count reducer receives a key as a text and the list of values are int writable. So key as a text and list of values as int writable. So that's what it is. It is here in your reducer code. Pair of, that is pair, text and list of int writable values. Group values. I'll say grouping values. New pair. Okay. I will quickly, okay, list of int writable values, right? So list of values equal to new array list. Okay. And then I say, I will take up this one, where it is my one. This is my one here. Okay. I will, for a given key, I will add 3 ones. Values dot add 1. I can add 3 ones to my list. And the key, okay, first and foremost, I'll say command X. I have created one new int writable once, and then new text of hello. What I'm saying to my code is new, your key is hello, and the list of values you are expecting is this. So what is my output I've been looking out for? That's what I'm thinking. That's what we have to see. So here, this is my input. Right, this is my input. I am giving my reducer the key as a hello and the values. The values are 1, 1, 1. So what is my output should bring up? It should bring up hello and 3. Reduce driver dot with output pair text. I'm not sure it's an int writable, right? Int writable. Let me just quickly verify. Reduce driver. It's a long writable. Long writable. Output equal to new pair of. I wanted to, the same. The key will be the same as a hello, and the value will be the new long writable of 1. Sorry, new long writable of how much? What's the value? 3. That's what I'm expecting. Okay, and I'm making this as my key. Just 1 minute. Text of key equal to new. I don't want to repeat the code. That's why I make sure that I declare it once and then use that. So key, this instead of making like here, I have taken it out so that if any changes in the code later, it should not affect here. So now I'm perfectly fine that key is here defined. So key and key is long writable 3, and with output, and output is this. and I run the test whether it is coming fine or not. Reduce driver dot run test. Add the throw equation and then test it whether you are expecting the correct output or not. Run as during test case. It's working fine. So you give 3. Let's say I'm just my mistake. I've given it as 2. Let's say by mistake, and I've given as 3 here. So it should throw an exception. So you can see that here it's wrong. It's giving you error. That means it's working fine. Your research code is working fine as expected. Now, let's say you wanted to test your entire end-to-end, that word count reducer. So that's what you can also do it here. So you have to give test driver code. For example, you want to test your driver code end-to-end, right? So any other logic you want to write it, you can write it in the reducer code. So likewise, I've tested for mapper. If you're expecting that I am receiving this, I'm receiving that, whether it will work or not. So it will actually, you can test it. So let me write a test case for testing the driver code. Test word count driver. So this is testing. So right now in the above in the above test cases which we have written, you are testing individually mapper and reducer. Now you are testing the entire end to end. So you're not testing mapper and reducer, but you are testing that if you give this input, what will be the final output? How whether final output is coming expected or not. So this method is like testing your testing end to end. So you have MapReduce driver. Sorry, what is that method? What is that variable name? MapReduce driver dot add dot with input with input pair of long writable text. Okay, with input pair, I can take up this and input pair. Okay, input pair. I can take up this as my input pair. So new pair of, okay, pair of long writable text input equal to new pair of long writable text. I'll give my long writable and hello, how are you? Let me set hello, hello, hello. So there's only one key, right? Hello, 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 comma 4. So this is my input. What is my output? MapReduce driver. Sorry, MapReduce driver dot with output. With output text key long writable val. So I wanted to have a new text of hello. That's my key, and the value I'm expecting new int writable of 4. That's a basic thing. So I give this input, and the output I'm expecting is a pair. Yeah, it's a pair of text long writable output equal to new pair of text long writable output. That's your this guy, but that has to be long writable, right? And then I say output. So this is my output, what I'm expecting. What happened with output? This is output, right? So this is fine. What has happened? It is not taking dot with output, right? It has not taken. And then you say MapReduce driver dot run test. So you've given this input and you wanted to see whether output is coming as hello 4 or not. So run this, right click, run as JUnit test. So you can see that on the left hand side, the test case has successfully passed. Right now, let's say you have here how 1 and here how. So here hello will be received 2 times, right? And then you have another output which will be how. So you have one output which is working fine, and you have another output 2, which is how. You also receive it 2 times, and you want to test everything. So this case with output will might not work. With all outputs, I believe it's there. With all, control space, with all output. So it's a list. With all outputs, a list. So with all output, I want to test. For that, I need to create a list of pair of text long writable. So these are generics. So you have to long writable output values new array list. Now output values dot add output 1, and you also add dot add. What's happening? Oh, it's a output. The way spelling is wrong here. Dot add output 2. So I've added all the outputs and you want to check with all the output values. And then you have run the test. So you say run as run JUnit test. And it has successfully passed. Okay, I think I have rewritten this, right? I could have written something like this so that both the test cases are present. So I'll just cut, copy, paste, and I'll write the previous test case. Hello. And I wanted to test with only one MapReduce driver dot with output. Just the previous one so that it is documented. Dot with output 1. So that's the same thing. So I've given you that if you want to have both of them, so right click, run as JUnit test case, and it should work. Now it's not working. So you have missing expected output hello 2. Okay, I'm very sorry. This is hello. it should be hello 4 because all are hellos, right? So it should be hello 4 JUnit test case, right? So all the this is how you are going to, this is how you have written the test case. Now let us also build this test case. Now you will see that it will run the test case as a part of the build when you do a Maven clean build. Just 1 minute.
Yep, thank you.